Congratulations, Galaxy. You just declared war on the deadliest species alive. Part 1. The mistake, the Galactic Concord had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. 847 species lived under its laws. They traded with each other. They shared technology. They believed they understood how the universe worked. They believed they knew everything worth knowing. They were wrong. Ambassador Cathverian sat in his observation chamber aboard the diplomatic vessel Endless Horizon. His 4 eyes watched the small blue planet growing larger on the view screen. It was a pretty world, he thought. Blue oceans, green and brown land, white clouds swirling across its surface. A shame, really, thought his assistant. A young Ethanari named Sareth entered the chamber with a data tablet. Ambassador, we have completed our assessment of the native species. Cathverian took the tablet without looking away from the planet. And they call themselves humans. They have existed for approximately 300,000 of their years. They developed agriculture roughly 10,000 years ago. They split the atom 80 years ago. They reached their moon 57 years ago. The ambassador made a dismissive sound. Slow progress. Yes, Ambassador. But there are complications. Now Cathverian turned. Complications? Soreth shifted uncomfortably. They are not unified. They have divided their world into approximately 200 separate nation-states. These nations frequently engage in warfare with each other. They have weapons capable of destroying their entire civilization several times over, and they have nearly used them on multiple occasions. They fight among themselves? Cathverian found this amusing. Most species unified long before reaching space. It was necessary for survival. How primitive. There is more, Ambassador. Their biology is unusual. They are persistent predators. On their world, they would chase prey for days without stopping until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They can function without sleep for extended periods. They heal from injuries that would kill most species. They consume substances that would poison others, alcohol, capsaicin, caffeine for pleasure. Cathverian waved his hand. Interesting trivia, but irrelevant. What is their threat level? Soreth consulted the tablet. Minimal. They have no faster-than-light travel. No energy shields. No plasma weapons. Their most advanced ships use chemical propulsion. They cannot even leave their own solar system. Then, the assessment is complete. Cathverian turned back to the view screen. Classification: pre-spacefaring, non-threat. Subcategory: non-sentient fauna. Soreth hesitated. Ambassador, with respect, they clearly are sentient. They have art, philosophy, mathematics, science. They have not achieved interstellar travel, Cathverian interrupted. By Concord law, that is the threshold. Without it, they are fauna, animals. Their world is open for development. He smiled with satisfaction. And this world sits on a hyperspace junction worth trillions of credits. The Concord will be most pleased. The vote was held 3 days later. 741 species voted in favor of Resolution 9847C. 106 voted against. The resolution passed. The notification was sent to Earth as a formality. It was translated into every human language and broadcast, across all frequencies: television, radio, internet. Every human on the planet received the same message at the same moment. Attention, inhabitants of Sol 3. By order of the Galactic Concord, your world has been classified as open territory. You have 30 of your planetary rotations to vacate. Your world now belongs to the Galactic Concord. Resistance is not advised. Mining fleets will arrive in 30 days. This is your only warning. Cathverian expected panic. He expected chaos. He expected the primitive creatures to turn on each other as their fragile civilization collapsed. Perhaps some would attempt to fight, but it would be pointless. What could chemical rockets and nuclear weapons do against ships that traveled faster than light? For 16 hours, Earth went silent. Cathverian watched the planet through his view screen, waiting. His sensors showed frantic activity across the surface. Communications were flying between the nation-states at unprecedented rates. Military forces were mobilizing everywhere, but no response came to the Concorde. Perhaps they are surrendering, Soros suggested hopefully. Perhaps they are preparing evacuation plans. Perhaps, Cathverian agreed. But something felt wrong. The patterns he was seeing did not look like surrender. They looked like preparation. At the 17th hour, Earth responded. The message came from every nation simultaneously. It was transmitted on every frequency. It was written in Galactic Standard, perfectly translated. 7 words. Come and take it. We'll be waiting. Cathverian stared at the message for a long moment. Then he laughed. He laughed until his eyes watered, until his sides ached. The audacity, the stupidity, the sheer magnificent arrogance of these primitive creatures. They think they can fight, he said between laughs. They actually think they can fight the Galactic Concorde. Soros did not laugh. She was studying new data on her tablet, and her face had gone pale. Ambassador, they have begun launching objects into orbit. Thousands of them. And they are accelerating their weapons programs beyond anything we projected. They have already begun reverse engineering the communication technology we used to send them the notification. In 17 hours? In 17 hours. Cathverian stopped laughing. That's impossible. It took the Ethanari 200 years to understand faster-than-light communication. I know, Ambassador. Soros looked up from her tablet. I think we may have made a mistake. Cathverian dismissed her concerns. He filed his report with the Concorde. He recommended sending a standard pacification fleet, 1,200 ships, more than enough to handle any pre-spacefaring species. The fleet was dispatched. On Earth, humanity continued to prepare. Old enemies shook hands. Ancient grudges were set aside. For the first time in their entire history, every human being on the planet agreed on one thing. They would not go quietly in military bases across the world. Soldiers volunteered for a mission that seemed like suicide. In laboratories, scientists worked without sleep to understand the alien technology. In factories, workers built weapons and ships and armor around the clock. And in a small room in Geneva, the leaders of every nation on Earth signed a single document. It had no title. It needed none. It contained only one sentence. We stand together, or we die apart. When Ambassador Cathverian finally realized his mistake, it was too late. The fleet was already in transit. The war had already begun. And humanity was waiting. Congratulations, Galaxy, you just declared war on the deadliest species, alive part. 3. The monster awakens. 8 months had passed since the first fleet's defeat. 8 months since humanity had proven that they would not go quietly into extinction. 8 months since the galaxy had learned to fear the small blue planet on the edge of known space. The Galactic Concorde did not accept defeat. Supreme Commander Vethraken stood before the Concorde's ruling council. His scales were dark with age, and his eyes held the cold wisdom of 3 centuries of warfare. He had been called out of retirement for this. The greatest military mind the Concorde had ever produced. Summoned to deal with a species that had not even achieved interstellar travel 1 year ago. The first fleet failed because they underestimated the enemy, he said. I will not make the same mistake. We will not attempt to land troops. We will not engage in close combat. We will simply burn their world from orbit until nothing remains. The council murmured approval. I am requesting 50,000 ships. Every species in the Concord will contribute. We will block out their sun with our fleet. We will turn their oceans to steam. We will glass their continents until even bacteria cannot survive. This is not a war. This is an extermination. The council voted. The motion passed unanimously. The second fleet assembled over the course of 3 months. 50,000 warships from every corner of the galaxy. The largest military force in Concord history. Enough firepower to destroy a dozen worlds. Vethraken watched his armada take shape and felt satisfied. No species could survive this. No matter how fierce, how determined, how willing to die, they could not fight physics. They could not breathe in a vacuum. They could not survive plasma bombardment. This would be the end of humanity. He was wrong. A second fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system and found an enemy waiting for them in 8 months. Humanity had achieved the impossible. They had reverse-engineered Concord faster than light drives. Not perfectly. Their ships were slower. Their jumps were shorter, but they could travel between stars. They had built energy shields. Crude and unstable, but functional. They had constructed warships, ugly, brutal things that looked nothing like the elegant vessels of the Concord. They bristled with weapons. They had no grace. They had no beauty. They had teeth. Supreme Commander, his sensor officer reported, voice trembling. We are detecting approximately 3,000 hostile vessels. They are forming a defensive line near the 4th planet. 3,000 against 50,000. Vethraken should have felt confident. Instead, he felt something he had not felt in 200 years. Fear. What is the composition of their fleet? Unknown design, sir. Our computers cannot classify them, but they appear heavily armed. Extremely heavily armed. And there is something else. What? They are broadcasting on all frequencies. Audio only. Vethraken hesitated. Let me hear it. The bridge filled with sound. Strange sound, rhythmic, aggressive, drums beating like hearts. Voices shouting in harmony. Electric instruments screaming with distortion. What is that noise? We believe it is their music, sir. Vethraken listened to the savage rhythm and understood something terrible. These creatures did not view war as a tragedy. They did not view it as a necessary evil. They viewed it as something to celebrate, something to enjoy. All ships advance. Full attack formation. Destroy everything that moves. The second fleet surged forward. 50,000 ships against 3,000. The outcome should have been certain. The humans charged. They did not wait for the Concord to come to them. They accelerated directly into the enemy formation, firing everything they had. Missiles, kinetic rounds, plasma beams, nuclear weapons. They threw everything at the Concord fleet with no regard for their own safety. The first Concord ship exploded within seconds, then another, then a dozen, then 100. The humans fought without rules. They rammed their ships into enemy vessels. They detonated their own reactors when surrounded. They launched boarding parties, even as their ships burned around them. They refused to retreat. They refused to surrender. They refused to die, and when they did die, they took as many enemies with them as possible. Vethraken watched his tactical display with growing despair. He was losing ships faster than he had ever lost ships before. The humans were everywhere at once, moving in patterns that made no sense, attacking from angles that should have been impossible. Sir, his tactical officer shouted. They're adapting. Every time we counter a tactic, they change to something new. They're learning faster than our computers can predict. This was the truth the Concord had failed to understand. Humanity had spent its entire existence at war. Not with aliens, but will itself. Every generation had fought. Every century had brought new conflicts, new weapons, new strategies. They had refined the art of killing to a degree no other species could match. And now, for the first time, they had a target that was not themselves. The battle raged for 9 days. 9 days of constant fighting. 9 days of ships burning and bodies floating in the void. 9 days of screaming and dying and killing. When it finally ended, 12,000 Concorde ships remained. The rest were destroyed or captured. The human fleet had been reduced to 400 vessels, but they had one. Supreme Commander Vethraken sat alone on his damaged flagship, staring at the stars. His fleet was broken. His confidence was shattered. He had come to exterminate a primitive species and had been defeated by creatures who should not have even been able to challenge him. Then his censor officer spoke the words that turned his blood to ice. "Sir, the human ships are not returning to Earth. They are pursuing us. They have entered hyperspace." Vethraken closed his eyes. "Where are they heading?" "Toward Concorde space, sir. They're following us home." For 12,000 years, the Galactic Concorde had expanded across the stars. They had conquered. They had colonized. They had never once been invaded. That was about to change. On the lead human ship, Admiral Maria Santos stood on her bridge and watched the stars streak past. Behind her, what remained of humanity's fleet followed. 400 ships. Less than 1% of the force the Concorde had sent against them. It was enough. "Set course for the nearest Concorde colony," she ordered. "It's time to show them what happens when you pick a fight with humanity." Her crew cheered. The monster had awakened, and it was hungry. "Congratulations, Galaxy. You just declared war on the deadliest species alive." Part 2. The miscalculation. Admiral Toreth Sen had fought 17 wars in his long career. He had commanded fleets against the Vorn Collective. He had crushed the rebellion of the Third Spiral. He had personally overseen the pacification of 6 primitive worlds. He knew war. He understood it. He was very, very good at it. As his fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the blue planet called Earth, he felt nothing but confidence. 1,200 warships. 3 million soldiers. Enough firepower to crack a planet in half. The humans had sent a defiant message, yes, but defiance meant nothing against superior technology. "Admiral," his censor officer reported, "we are detecting approximately 50,000 objects in orbit around the planet. Satellites? Some, sir, but many appear to be ships of a sort." Toreth Sen studied the sensor data. The objects were crude, ugly, made of metal and ceramic, held together with welds and bolts. They had no shields. Their weapons were primitive kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives. Many of them were barely larger than escape pods. "This is their defense fleet?" He could not hide his amusement. "These are not warships. These are coffins with engines." "Sir, there is something else. The ships appear to be crewed by only 1 or 2 individuals each. Some have no crew at all. They seem to be remotely controlled." "Single pilots? Against capital ships?" Toreth Sen shook his head. "They are more foolish than I thought. All ships advance to planetary orbit. Destroy anything that approaches. This will be over within hours." The fleet moved forward in perfect formation. 1,200 ships, each one a masterpiece of Concorde engineering. Shields shimmered. Plasma cannons charged. Fighters launched from carrier bays in organized waves. The humans attacked, not with their pathetic fleet, not with missiles or kinetic weapons. Instead, thousands of small objects rose from the planet's surface. Toreth Sen's sensors identified them as primitive. Chemical rockets, the same technology humans had used to reach their moon decades ago. "They're launching rockets at us?" His weapons officer laughed. Sir, our point defense will wait. Torith Sen leaned forward. Magnify. What are those rockets carrying? The image zoomed in. The Admiral's blood went cold. The rockets were not carrying warheads. They were carrying humans. Individual humans sealed in reinforced suits, strapped to rockets aimed directly at the Concorde fleet. Each one carried tools, weapons, explosives. They were launching themselves at his ships. Open fire, Torith Sen ordered. Destroy them all. The fleet's point defense systems activated. Thousands of beams lanced out. Rockets exploded. Bodies tumbled through space. It did not matter. For every human they killed, 10 more launched. Then 100. Then 1,000. They came from every continent. They came in rockets, in modified aircraft, in pods that were barely more than metal shells with oxygen tanks. They did not slow down. They did not turn back. They came and came and came. The first human reached Torith Sen's flagship in 47 minutes. His name was Sergeant David Chen. He was 34 years old. He had a wife and 2 children in Beijing. He knew he would never see them again. He did not care. David's rocket had been hit twice by point defense fire. His oxygen was leaking. His left arm was broken. He was bleeding from a wound in his side. None of this stopped him. He hit the hull of the flagship at nearly 200 kilometers per hour. His magnetic boots activated. He did not bounce off. He clung to the ship like a spider, pulled out his plasma torch reverse-engineered from captured alien technology in just 3 weeks and began cutting through the hull. Alarms screamed throughout the flagship. Hull breach on Deck 17. Someone shouted. Deck 12. Deck 31. They're everywhere. Torith Sen watched his tactical display with growing horror. Humans were landing on his ships like insects. They cut through hulls. They crawled through maintenance shafts. They fought their way through corridors with weapons that should not have even scratched Concorde armor, but somehow did. Sir, his communications officer said, voice shaking, I'm receiving reports from across the fleet. The humans they're not behaving like soldiers. Explain. They're not trying to survive. They're not retreating when wounded. We killed one 3 times, shot it, stabbed it, threw it out an airlock, and it kept crawling back into the ship. They're using explosive devices strapped to their own bodies. They're laughing, sir. While they fight. While they die. They're laughing. Torith Sen did not understand. In all his years of war, he had never seen anything like this. The Concorde fought with strategy, with tactics, with the goal of minimizing casualties while achieving objectives. Humans fought like they did not care if they died. Like death was just another tool to be used against the enemy. David Chen reached the flagship's engine room 4 hours after landing. He had killed 11 Concorde soldiers on the way. He had been shot 6 times. He could barely see. He could barely breathe. He looked at the glowing reactor core and smiled. For my children, he whispered. The explosion tore through 3 decks. Across the fleet, similar scenes played out. Humans died by the thousands. But they kept coming. They captured ships. They destroyed ships. They turned the Concorde's own weapons against them. In 18 hours. It was over. Admiral Torith Sen sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display. 400 of his ships were gone, destroyed or captured. His flagship was crippled. His crew was decimated. And the humans were still launching rockets. All ships, he said quietly, retreat. Maximum speed. Get us out of here. The remnants of the First Fleet fled. Torith Sen's final report to the Concorde contained only one recommendation. Reclassify species Sol-3 immediately. Non-sentient fauna classification is incorrect. These creatures are not primitive. They are not weak. They are not animals. He paused, trying to find the right words. They are monsters, and we have made them very, very angry. On Earth, humanity celebrated its first victory, but they did not celebrate for long. They knew this was only the beginning. The Concorde would return with more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. Humanity would be ready in factories across the world. Workers studied, captured Concorde technology, and began building ships of their own. In laboratories, scientists unlocked the secrets of faster-than-light travel. In military academies, officers developed new tactics based on the lessons of the first battle. The galaxy had declared war on humanity. Humanity intended to win. Congratulations, Galaxy. You just declared war on the deadliest species alive. Part 4. The Reckoning the Galactic. Concorde had never been invaded. In 12,000 years of history, no enemy had ever reached their core worlds. Their borders were too vast. Their fleets were too powerful. Their technology was too advanced. Humanity did not care about any of this. The first Concorde colony fell within 3 weeks of the Second Fleet's defeat. It was a mining world called Threshold, home to 2 million veterinary workers. The humans arrived with 40 ships, battered, damaged, held together with emergency repairs, and demanded surrender. The colony's governor laughed at them. He had a defensive fleet of 200 ships. He had orbital platforms. He had ground-based weapons. He had no understanding of what he was facing. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the defensive fleet was debris. The orbital platforms were burning. The ground-based weapons were silent. 40 human ships had become 31, but the humans had won. More importantly, they did something no Concorde enemy had ever done before. They did not massacre the population. They did not enslave the survivors. They did not strip the world of resources. They broadcast a message. People of Threshold, we are humanity. We did not start this war. Your Concorde declared us non-sentient. They tried to take our home. They tried to kill our families. We defended ourselves. Now we are bringing the war to those who started it. Admiral Santos appeared on every screen on the planet. Her face was tired. Her uniform was stained with smoke and blood. But her eyes were clear. You have a choice. Surrender, and you will be treated with respect. Continue fighting, and you will lose. We do not want to rule you. We do not want to destroy you. We want justice. We want the Concorde to admit what they did was wrong. We want them to know that they cannot simply decide to exterminate a species because they want their planet. She paused. We also want them to be afraid, because maybe if they are afraid enough, they will never do this to anyone else. The message spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Every species in the Concorde heard it. Every world learned that the primitives from Sol 3 were not content to simply defend their home. They were coming, and they could not be stopped. Over the next 6 months, humanity carved a path of destruction through Concorde space. They did not conquer, they liberated. Many species in the Concorde had not joined willingly. They had been conquered themselves, absorbed into the collective, forced to obey laws they did not write. Now, as human ships appeared in their skies, these species saw an opportunity. Rebellions erupted on 100 worlds. Species that had been oppressed for centuries rose up against their Concorde masters. They did not always win, but they tied down Concorde forces, prevented reinforcements from reaching the front lines, turned the enemy's own territory against them. Humanity used every advantage. They used spies. Humans could learn alien languages faster than any other species, could adapt their behavior to match local customs, could blend in anywhere. They used sabotage. Human engineers could break anything, could turn weapons against their makers, could find weaknesses that no one else would notice. They used diplomacy. Humans were somehow able to make friends with anyone, to find common ground with species they had never met, to build alliances based on nothing but shared enemies and mutual respect. And when none of these worked, they used force. The Concord's intelligence service compiled report after report, trying to understand how the humans kept winning despite being outnumbered, outgunned, and far from home. The reports made for terrifying reading. Humans could survive injuries that would kill any other species. They had been seen fighting with missing limbs, with holes in their bodies, with wounds that should have been instantly fatal. Their medical technology was primitive compared to the Concord, but their bodies simply refused to die. Humans could function without rest for days at a time. Concord soldiers needed regular sleep cycles or their performance degraded. Human soldiers would fight for 100 hours straight, running on nothing but stimulants and willpower. Humans ate poisons for pleasure: alcohol, caffeine, capsaicin. Substances that would kill other species were consumed recreationally. This made them almost impossible to assassinate. Poisons that worked on everyone else simply gave humans headaches. Humans formed emotional bonds with everything. Their prisoners reported being treated with kindness. Their enemies reported being befriended. They kept animals as companions. They named their ships, their weapons, their vehicles. They cared about things that had no value, and this caring made them fight harder. And perhaps most terrifying of all, humans did not fear death. Every other species in the galaxy had evolved to survive. Self-preservation was the most basic instinct. But humans seemed to view death as an acceptable price for victory. They sacrificed themselves without hesitation. They ran toward danger instead of away from it. They died smiling, knowing that their deaths would help their species survive. The Concord did not know how to fight an enemy like this. 6 months after the invasion began, humans reached the Ethanari homeworld, the same species that had written the original assessment, declaring humanity non-sentient. Ambassador Cathverian, stripped of his title but not yet arrested, watched from his window as human ships filled the sky. He had expected monsters, savage beasts bent on revenge. What he saw instead surprised him. The human commander requested a meeting. Admiral Chen Weilin came down to the planet's surface with a guard of only 4 soldiers. She walked through streets filled with terrified Ethanari and showed no aggression. She asked politely to speak with the planetary government. Cathverian attended the meeting. He needed to understand. "Admiral," he said, "you could destroy us. You could glass our world as we plan to glass yours. Why are you negotiating?" Chen Weilin studied him with dark, tired eyes. "Because we are not you. I don't understand. You looked at us and saw animals. You decided we were less than you because we had not achieved the same technology. You never considered that we might have value, that we might have art, love, dreams, families." She leaned forward. "We looked at you and saw people. Different people. Strange people. But still people. We do not destroy people simply because we can." Cathverian felt shame for the first time in his long life. "Then what do you want?" "We want the war to end. We want the Concord to admit that what they did was wrong. We want a seat at your council so this never happens again. And we want every species that was classified as non-sentient to be reclassified. That's all? That's everything." Chen Weilin stood. "You have 1 week to respond. After that, we continue our advance toward the Concord capital. We would prefer not to, but we will if we must." She left. The Ethanari government debated for 3 days. Other species sent messages, some demanding resistance, others begging for surrender. The Concord was fracturing. Species that had never agreed on anything were united in one belief: the war had to end. On the 4th day, The Ethanari sent a message to the Concord Council. We recommend accepting humanity's terms. We cannot win this war. We can only choose how we lose it. The message spread across the galaxy. The end was coming. Congratulations, Galaxy. You just declared war on the deadliest species alive, Part 5. The New Order. The Treaty of Soul was signed aboard a captured Concord flagship that humanity had renamed Lesson Learned. Representatives from 847 species gathered in the ship's great hall. Many had never seen a human before. They stared at the small, soft creatures with a mixture of fear and fascination. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin stood at the center of the hall, a document in her hands. She looked tired. She looked old, though she was barely 50. The war had taken years from her life, years she would never get back. But she had won. We have 3 demands, she said, her voice carrying through the silent hall. 3 demands and the war ends. Refuse any of them, and we continue fighting until there is nothing left to fight. No one spoke. No one moved. The galaxy held its breath. First, every species currently classified as non-sentient fauna will be reclassified immediately. Slavery, forced uplift, and resource extraction without consent are now crimes punishable by Earth. Any species that continues these practices will answer to us. The representatives shifted uncomfortably. Many of them had built their economies on exploiting primitive worlds. This would cost them trillions of credits. They agreed. Second, Earth receives a permanent seat on the Concord Council with full veto power. We will have a voice in every decision that affects the galaxy. We will never again be declared non-existent by those who have never met us. This was harder to accept. The Concord Council had existed for 12,000 years. Its membership was sacred. To give these newcomers, these primitives who had achieved interstellar travel less than 2 years ago, equal power with species that had ruled the stars for millennia was offensive, but the alternative was more war. They agreed. Third, Chen Wei-Lin's voice grew quiet. The hall leaned forward to hear her. A memorial will be built on every Concord capital world. It will list the names of every human who died in this war. She paused. 847 million names. The number hung in the air like a physical weight. 847 million. More than the entire population of some Concord species. Men, women, children. Soldiers and civilians. Parents and grandparents. Dreams and futures erased. Every species that voted to declare us non-sentient will look upon these names and remember what they did. Every child born on your worlds will learn this history. Every generation will know the price of arrogance. No one objected. The treaty was signed. The war was over. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to change. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were freed. Worlds that had been stripped of resources received aid. The Concord, which had been a tool of oppression for so long, slowly transformed into something new, something that included all voices, not just the powerful ones. Humanity took its seat on the council. They did not seek revenge. They did not demand payment or territory. They simply watched and voted and made sure that what had happened to them could never happen again. Ambassador Cathverian was put on trial for his role in the war. He did not deny his guilt. He did not make excuses. He simply asked for the opportunity to speak. I made a mistake, he told the court. A mistake born of arrogance and ignorance. I looked at humanity and saw only what they lacked. I did not see what they had. What did they have? The judge asked. Cathverian was silent for a long moment. Each other, he said finally. They had each other. They fought among themselves for thousands of years. They caused themselves more suffering than we could ever have inflicted. And yet, when we threatened them, they stopped, instantly, completely. They pointed all that violence, all that fury, all that relentless drive to survive, and they pointed it at us. He shook his head slowly. We thought their divisions made them weak. We were fools. Their divisions were practice. They spent their entire existence learning how to fight, how to adapt, how to survive against impossible odds. And then we gave them a common enemy. The judge leaned forward. Do you regret your actions? I regret the deaths I caused. I regret the suffering. But I do not regret learning the truth. Kethvirian looked up, and his eyes held something strange, not hatred, not fear, but something close to respect. Humanity is the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of their technology, not because of their numbers, but because they will never, ever give up. They will fight until the last human dies, and then their ghosts will keep fighting. He paused. And now they are our allies. Now they stand with us instead of against us. This is the greatest gift the Concord has ever received, even if we do not deserve it. Kethvirian was sentenced to life in prison. He accepted the punishment without complaint. He spent his remaining years writing a history of the war, a record of humanity's rise from primitive species to galactic power in less than 2 years. The book became required reading throughout the Concord. On Earth, humanity rebuilt. The scars of war would take generations to heal. Cities had been destroyed. Populations had been devastated. Families had been torn apart, but they had survived. More than survived. They had won. In a small park in Geneva, near the building where the leaders of Earth had signed their unity document, a statue was erected. It showed a human figure, neither male nor female, neither young nor old, standing with one hand raised toward the stars. At the base of the statue, a single sentence was carved. We came in peace. We left in victory. We will return as friends. Species from across the galaxy came to see the statue. They came to understand the creatures who had defeated the greatest military power in history. They came to learn, and they came to remember. In the classified archives of the Galactic Concord, a file was updated. The original assessment of Sol 3, written by Ambassador Kethvirian all those years ago, now carried a new warning. It was flagged at the highest security level. Every species in the Concord was required to read it. The warning was simple. Species classification. Apex predator. Do not engage. Do not provoke. Do not, under any circumstances, give them a common enemy. Below this, someone had added a final note. They will become your gods or your executioners. The choice is theirs. Humanity read this warning and laughed. They did not want to be gods. They did not want to be executioners. They wanted to explore the stars, meet new species, learn new things. They wanted to build and create and discover, but they kept their weapons sharp just in case. Because if the galaxy had taught them anything, it was that peace was earned, not given. And humanity intended to keep earning it one day at a time, one friendship at a time, one choice at a time. The war was over. The future was just beginning. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the universe watched the small blue planet that had surprised everyone, including itself, and wondered what these strange, stubborn, beautiful creatures would do next. Whatever it was, it would be interesting. It would be human.